Hello, and welcome to all the participants. Purvashi, can you please stop sharing the screen? Yeah, thanks a lot. So good evening to all the participants and welcome to today's event. I will just be sharing my screen and giving a brief overview about what is Venture Center, what is TechX, and I'll also introduce the speaker of today, Mr. Rakesh Dhawan, who has already joined us. Just give me a moment, please. Pradna, my screen is full screen?
Yes, it is full screen.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So, welcome to all the participants and our speaker today for this talk on commercializing new technology lessons from the trenches. Before we actually go to the today's event, I will briefly introduce to you what is Venture Center and the organizers of today's event, TechX.in. Venture Center, this is India's leading inventive business incubator. We are a Section 8 non-profit incorporated as Entrepreneurship Development Center. And we started operations in 2007. It is the 15th year that we have entered in our operations, and we have been hosted by CSIR NCL. And we are the first incubator in the CSR family. We have been approved by NSTEDB and by RAC, and we have been recognized by DSIR and the IPP. We are a CREDAL accredited NPO, and we are also eligible to accept CSR funding. Venture Center has been recognized by many different awards for its outstanding work. We have just mentioned a few here. First is the National Award for Technology Business Incubator in 2015, the Asian Incubator of the Year Award, which was given in 2018, and the National Entrepreneurship Award in the year 2019. Mission of Venture Center is to nucleate and nurture technology and knowledge-based enterprises of India by leveraging the scientific and engineering competencies of the institutions in the region. Our focus is to basically promote inventive enterprises and spin-offs from R&D institutions. We are sector agnostic, but our strengths lie in science-based technologies. Few of them have been noted below. Now I will give a brief overview about what is TechX. TechX, this is a regional tech transfer hub which has of Venture Center, and we have been supported by NBM BIRAC. Aim of TechX.in is to support technology commercialization journey. It helps to facilitate exchange and transactions related to any science or engineering based technological ideas. As stated earlier, we are a resource center of Venture Center, and we have been designated as the regional tech transfer office by BIRAC TBT Government of India and have been supported by the National Biopharma Mission. So TechX.in helps innovators and technology commercialization entities to help in technology transfer and IP support. For this, there are different services that we have come up with, which are divided into tech commercialization, policies and IP protection and decision support, and industry academia partnering. So details of all these services, how we cater to these services, you can find it on www.techx.in website. Now, I will, without taking much of the time, we will come directly to today's talk on commercialization of new technology, lessons from the trenches. So we have with us today Mr. Rakesh Dhawan. He is the president and CEO of Falco E-Motors. Mr. Rakesh is a serial entrepreneur, inventor, and engineer. He has launched several companies and products in his career in the US and in India. Rakesh has also several patents and journal papers to his credit. He has a BTech in electrical engineering from IIT Kharagpur and MSEE from the University of Minnesota. And he is an MBA from the Old Dominion University. With this, I would like to now invite Mr. Rakesh to kindly share his screen and start with his talk.
Thank you, Vidula. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, very clear. Yeah.
All right. So I will turn on my video. Can you see me?
Yes, sir, we can see you.
All right. And let me start, share my screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I think we'll have to do full screen.
How's that?
Yeah, good.
Yes, it's visible.
All right. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Vidula. So let me get started. So the agenda, I have a brief agenda here. So the four things I want to talk about, Vidula has already given an intro about myself. I'll add a couple of sentences to that, and then we'll move on to factors for success / failure. I want to talk about S-curve and then the process of commercialization. So these are the four things. I mean, of course, the subject is vast, but these I think are the most important components when I see them through my experience. So in terms of brief introduction, I have been in commercializing the products since I got out of college. Being an electrical engineer, I guess you don't have a choice. At least I didn't have a choice. I got a lot of opportunities to launch various products in consumer, industrial, medical, automotive sectors. I've launched 7 startups, have several patents, etc. So that gives you some credibility in terms of what I'm going to talk about. At least will have some meaning through my experience. So let's talk about factors for success. Now, what I have found through my experience is that timing is everything. So when you're trying to commercialize a product, when your timing is off, no matter how great your technology is, you are not going to make money, or it's not going to make an impact. No matter how great your passion is, if the timing is off, nothing works. No matter how much money you have, even if you have infinite money, even if you have infinite talent, even if you have infinite resources, if your timing is off, it is not going to work. And I'm going to give you some examples of this, and this is quite important to know. I have been part of startups where we spent hundreds of millions of dollars and the result was not there because we were off time. And other cases where when your timing is perfect, even little resources can have major benefit or major output. So let's go through some examples. So the first example I want to give you is of George Westinghouse. Now, I think a lot of people have forgotten about him. He is my personal hero, and he made a major impact in the field of electrical engineering. And he was not only a brilliant inventor and electrical engineer, he also had a very shrewd business acumen. And he realized at least exploited the timing very well. He exploited the inventions at that time of Nikola Tesla very well, of induction motor and alternating current. Now, when you talk about his impact is wide-ranging. Nowadays, you can't be a Westinghouse. If you decide you want to be Westinghouse, you obviously have to have tremendous amount of resources. Even then, it's not possible. His impact is in power generation, steam turbine generator, electrical technology, aviation, gas turbines, nuclear powers, industrial motors, rail transit, consumer electronics. Now, the impact is simply unbelievable because he was able to leverage the advances in electrical technology, in AC, in alternating current technology and induction motors to amazing benefit. So he made one bet, and when you make a right bet, compared to Thomas Edison, who was against alternating current, Westinghouse went big on alternating current technology, and he invented several devices and made a huge impact to the industry. Now let's talk about the second timing part I want to talk about to bring this home is Netscape. Now Netscape browser was the first browser which was capitalizing on the internet. The company was founded in 1994. It went public in a big way in around 1997 or so, and very quickly died. Now, why it died so quickly was because Microsoft ate their lunch. Microsoft came with a better browser, gave it away for free, and Netscape was not able to adapt. So the question is, they obviously had the first mover's advantage. But the first mover's advantage did not last very long. And the reason is basically Netscape was a one-trick pony. They had no way to adapt their business model. So even if you have a first mover's advantage, your longevity is not guaranteed. And just having one browser to support your company was just not enough. Now compare that. So Netscape wrapped up operations in 2003, and let's compare that with Google. Google went public in 2004. And now think about that. 2004, how perfect is that timing? You had a lot of internet noise had already evaporated. And you had essentially the internet bubble had also burst in 2001. So Google had the real business model, and the timing of an IPO was impeccable. You couldn't go wrong. In 2004, when the market had matured, they didn't need to be first movers. All they needed to be at the right place at the right time. And you can see that their share price till date, have 4,000%. 4,000% growth compared to just a regular stock market, Spider, which is 834%. So this is this example of a brilliant timing. Let's see some other examples. One of my favorite stories is of Pixar. Now, Pixar was a company in 3D animation, and it was acquired by Steve Jobs in 1986. And they had signed a deal with Disney to do 3 movies, having a profit where the Disney will share 3 to 5% of the profit of the movies with Pixar. Now, this is the brilliant part: is Toy Story was launched around November of 1995, and Pixar went public a week after Toy Story. And here, Steve Jobs made a bet that Toy Story was going to be big. If it would not have been big, it would have been a disaster. And Disney acquired Pixar in 2006. This was a handsome return on this on Pixar. So and let's pose here a question: is what would have happened to the value of Pixar if it didn't go public a week after Toy Story launched? Now, Disney would have not valued the company if Pixar didn't go public. Then there was no way for Steve Jobs to be able to get the value he was seeking. So he knew that Disney was going to come back on a table for a renegotiation and renegotiate the contract. And before that, he wanted to make sure he had enough resources, because he was going after 50% profit of the movies, which was not possible without having the cash flow. So in order to have a cash flow, they decided to go public a week after Toy Story. Toy Story, of course, was a big success, and the IPO was a big success. And Disney bought them handsomely. So it was a brilliant move as how to maximize the value of an entity. And here again, timing is very important. If we don't pay attention to timing, it is impossible to maximize the value of an entity. And here at the bottom is a YouTube video by Ed Catmull, who was the president of Pixar, and he tells very brilliantly how Steve Jobs and his team decided to do an IPO a week after Toy Story launch. So the other perfect timing I want to talk about is Tesla. Now, Tesla was started in 2003, and you can see that it had pretty long gestation period. Not many companies can last that long without producing profit. So it could have closed the shop in 2012, 2013, 14, 15, did not close the shop. Elon Musk had, persevered, and eventually, essentially, you can see that things began to turn around, and now they're producing almost 300,000 units a quarter. Now, it's rare that a company, you can have such a long time period before you start generating revenue. But Tesla timing is still impeccable because this is lithium-ion technology. As you see, the growth rate of lithium-ion technology, this of course goes up to 2030. But you can see that around 2020, it pretty much matches closely with Tesla's units. And this is where, if I would have tried to produce an electric car before 2010, it was impossible for me to make money. And I was part of a team. I was part of a team where we were attempting to manufacture electric cars, and we were using nickel metal hydride batteries, and they had no chance. They had absolutely no chance. So until lithium ion technology became available in a safe manner, without that, Tesla would not have been successful. So it's again, and of course, I think to Elon Musk's credit, he persevered, starting the company in 2003 and going through several rounds of funding, eventually to last long enough so that you could have a pivot with lithium-ion technology becoming very viable. Another perfect timing, of course, is iPhone launch. Now, if you see here, iPhone was enabled because you had lithium-ion batteries, multi-touch screens, powerful CPUs, cell phone networks, web browsers, scratch-proof touchscreen glass, etc. Now, these technology, if they were not available, you could not really have iPhone in its full form. And there were interesting business factors. There were consumers now looking for integration of functions: phone, music, personal organizer, camera, etc. And then there were big screw-ups by manufacturers such as Motorola, BlackBerry. So it was the perfect storm that Apple and Steve Jobs were able to leverage beautifully and launch a perfect product. So these were some of the examples, talking about the timing. Now now I want to continue talking about the timing, but I want to put that in perspective of S-curves. I believe that S-curves give us pretty good understanding of if we can get it. Sometimes it's very difficult to really understand where we are in the market. But if we can define a market in terms of S-curve, we can have a better understanding of the timing and also the better understanding of business model we can use. So let's talk about an S-curve. Now, in this S-curve, what you have on the vertical axis, I call it market penetration. This can be, you can say unit volumes, you can say dollars, rupees, whatever you want to use. And then on the horizontal axis, you have time. Now, what it tells us is that on the starting point, when you see at the bottom left-hand side, that you really have a long tail with really no results. And this becomes a missionary effort, a missionary effort where you can see Tesla from 2003 to 2012, 13, 14, it was really a missionary effort. A lot of money going in, and there are no results to see for a long, long time as you're building platforms, you're building technology. So it becomes very difficult, and many companies, when they are going after revolutionary products, they vanish in the tail zone because they run out of resources and the market is not ready. Now, somehow, let's say you go through the inflection point here, you begin to see some results. Now, from inflection point to, we are all getting rich, it requires tremendous amount of resources and tremendous amount of change, because this is where the consumer is awake, consumer is knowledgeable, consumer is mature, and consumer is actively looking to fulfill her demands, her needs. So it's a different kind of business model when you go from being a missionary stage to being a fast pace growth stage. And then the last stage, of course, is when you become a commodity. All of a sudden, your product is not cool enough anymore. So it becomes a commodity. It's like a potato here, potato there. It doesn't matter where do you buy that potato from. It is a potato. It's a commodity, and the value of the entity decreases quite a bit. The value of profits decrease quite a bit. So it's important to understand where we are with respect to our products on the S curve, because that gives us good amount of clues how to interact with the market. Now, S curve, you can see S curve is prevalent for many processes, not just products, but also business processes, also our life processes. There's S curve, and there's a beginning and there's an end. Everything on this earth, there's a beginning and there's an end. And so you can fit into S curve. There's a maximum value time period and there's a minimum value time period. So identifying your position on the S curve can give clues about timing. And also it can tell us what kind of business model do you adopt for each stage of the S curve, because same business model just doesn't work. When you are in a missionary stage compared to when you're in a high growth stage, compared to when you are in a maturity stage, the business models have to change. Now, companies like Apple, they have mastered this game quite well, where you have different versions of the product every year, and as a result, you restart your S curve for the new product. And it allows you to build revenue streams where you actually have continuous upward growth when you continue to do so. But the downfall of this is that every revision of the product becomes more and more expensive. So there's a concept of shrinking life cycle. So version 1 to version 2 to 3 to 4, each revision of the product becomes more expensive, and it requires less life, and you have to produce new products in a shorter period of time. So here is an example here that you go from revision 1 to 2, you are looking at shrinking your time period by 40%. And if you go from revision 2 to 3, you have another almost 20% reduction here. And then you go from revision 3 to 4. So from 1 to 4, you have to reduce your life cycle of producing new product by 80% to be competitive in the market. If you don't do it, then the competition will take over the market, and you're out of business. So this is the downside of being able to produce different revisions every year of the product. Now, here is the cost. Unfortunately, the cost of each revision is going to be, now I'm not talking about incremental improvements. I'm really talking about that you are including beneficial features into every revision, and they're substantial. So here you can see that going from revision 1 to 2, your cost has gone 2.5 times, and then going from 2 to 3, your costs have gone 5 times. So there's an exponential increase in cost exponential decrease in time frame. So basically, you are pushed towards obsolescence. You have to be really super competitive to stay alive in the market for a long time. So the third part I want to talk about the process of commercialization. Now, in order to be able to go after commercialization, it has to become the top priority for the organization. Not many companies are good at commercialization. Of course, you launch a product, but then to stay in the game, to stay competitive, commercialization has to be a top priority, having measurable goals, which are not easy to do, and also develop necessary organization skills. Having an R&D setup is not same as commercialization. Having manufacturing setup with sales support is not same as commercialization for the different times, different mindset. So, and having a follow that up with aggressive and massive action. Unless you have managers who are used to taking aggressive and massive action, commercialization becomes, again, a very expensive game. Companies like Apple have perfected it. They have very well timed it. They have got a very set schedule, and they stick to that schedule quite well. And then, of course, you have a relentless attention to improve process. So commercialization is competitiveness. Without repeated commercialization, it becomes very difficult to have a longevity of the organization, and also profitability is not possible. So commercialization lends to massive competitiveness. The question, what is the superior commercialization skill? The way I define it through my experience is that how quickly can we respond or change demand in our favor? Now, sometimes we are lucky enough to be able to give something to the consumer and they can adapt to it. But other times we are looking at the market, we are reading the market, and the question is, how can we respond to it quickly? And two major benefits of commercialization, of course, is higher returns and longevity. When we talk about longevity, when you talk about, can you really have an organization that can last for a long, long time? Companies like Bosch are 100+ years old, but not many companies can last that long. So every company, no matter how good they are, how profitable they are today, it is a difficult game to last for a long, long time. So what are the rules of the game? And one of the rules is that, can you constantly innovate, and can you go and enter different market segments, enter different markets, and constantly introduce new products? So the challenges to commercialization is that as you introduce new products, you're also making the consumer more knowledgeable. So their experiences are becoming more refined. Their needs are becoming more refined. So it has got a downside, is that you have to cater to those needs. You have to develop products to meet those needs. The upside is that it also creates niches. The niches you can leverage too, and those niches can be very profitable. You don't have to be jack of all trades. You can identify a niche in the market and cater to it, and it can be extremely profitable when you can leverage that. So time to market. Now, we talked about the timing, we talked about S-curve. Now, we have been taught, that there is always a first mover advantage. Now, I don't believe that. I think the first mover advantage is a myth, because to me, a second mover can learn very quickly the mistakes of the first mover, and can really leverage from the mature market like Google did. So to me, saying that the first entrant will command a premium is not always true. You have to be careful when you use that rule of the game, is that you have to be at a right place at the right time, and that's important to identify. First entry at the right time commands a premium, and mistimed product introductions cost the most money. So when you screw up the timing, then it doesn't matter. You have infinite time, you have infinite resources, infinite money, infinite talent. It is not going to matter when we miss the opportunity. So the one of the challenges, another challenge we face is the increasing cost of development. How do you handle the increasing cost of development as you go from revision 1 to 2 to 3, etc.? So one way to do that is, can we identify a range of markets that can benefit from our development? For example, when we have developed a lot of motors at Falco e-motors. So we try to say, okay, can we leverage these motors in electric bicycle market, or in electric motorcycle market, or in industrial fan market, or in wheelchair market? So that way what happens is you're able to take a platform and you're able to spread the development cost over various industries and market segments. So that becomes a very effective strategy to be able to lower your cost of commercialization. So how do you measure commercialization capability? Of course, we want to develop product, and we want to develop product quickly. So time to market becomes critical. Is one. Can you develop a product, launch a product in 6 months, in 9 months, in 3 months? That's important. Now, of course, you want to launch a perfect product. It's not, going to the market with the wrong product is going to basically lead to disaster. So it's important to have the perfect product to go to the market. A range of markets, that's also important. That allows you to be able to leverage your development cost. Number of products, how many number of products or variations you can introduce, and the breadth of technologies. All these factors together basically give a measure of your commercialization capability. So what does it take to build commercialization capability? So here, some simple rules to follow. One is making commercialization a priority. Setting goals and benchmarks. Goals and benchmarks is exactly what do you want to happen at what time. It can be, starting from just your technical specifications to prototypes to proof of concepts to manufacturing. All of those need to be well defined with performance and goals, and that requires that we monitor that closely. And then the third rule is build cross-functional skills. Now, every market is different, every product is different. So it's important to build the cross-functional skills where you can bring people from management, people from technical, people from sales, people from manufacturing, to be able to look at the big picture, what it takes to launch a product. Just doing an R&D and a proof of concept, unfortunately, it's not commercialization. You have to be able to take the product, manufacture it, sell it, and scale it. That's commercialization. And then, of course, you want to promote hands-on management to speed action and decisions. What does that mean? Well, that means is, bring your team close to problems. Bring your team close to manufacturing. Bring your team close to customers, and have them experience the pain of customers. And so that when you have your development team close to customers, when you have management team close to customers, then you have ability to be able to sort out problems at a much faster speed than otherwise possible. It's very possible, it's very easy. As the companies grow, we build silos, and when we build silos, we get farther and farther away from the customer. And when we are farther and farther away from the customer, we don't see their pain. And as a result, we really lose ability to have speedy actions. So that was the end of my, I think I did well, 37 minutes, not bad. So I'm ready for some questions.
Thank you, Rakesh. I think while we wait for some more questions to come up on the chat box, let me begin by asking you a few things. One of the things you brought up, which quite prominently, was making commercialization a priority. And usually we find that uh, in India, for example, we are very good entrepreneurs in general, but when it comes to technology commercialization and entrepreneurship, which involves technology de-risking, we are a little behind, right? And in that, perhaps, this point you made about making commercialization a priority probably is an important factor, which people don't actually make it a priority. One of the reasons could be that you can actually make quite a lot of good profits without necessarily making it a priority. And the way you put it, commercialization looked like a treadmill, right? Where you have to keep running these repeated commercialization exercises as well. So in the Indian context, do you want to comment on, how do we bring that that culture of commercialization where that's an integral part of building businesses, and people don't ignore that at their own peril, of course.
Yeah, no, I have actually, seen tremendous amount of change in India, and I am actually pleased at what I see. There has been, there has been significant developments, and I see, I left the country in 1992, and at that time, I think Infosys was just, coming on the horizon. And we really had no concept of product development in a true sense. Today, when I see it, with there's so many wonderful electric vehicles being launched, so many wonderful bioproducts being launched, pharmaceutical products being launched. I see the youth has continuously, because of the tremendous resourcefulness, I do see a lot is changing very rapidly in India. And it's very exciting to see it. Yes, I think, we are a big country, we are, so as a result, we continually need to spread the good word. But I do see a lot of maturity, in terms of what the aesthetics are, in terms of what the customer wants, in terms of even integrating art with engineering. Our product designs have improved dramatically. Our sense of style has improved dramatically. So I am overall, I feel that the country is going in the right direction. And of course, companies like Tata, they do struggle at times, but I think they are still able to move the needle. As the companies become bigger, I think our focus becomes more and more fragmented. So it becomes more and more challenging to have commercialization as a priority. And until the profits begin to slip, we don't pay too much attention to it. So I think that unfortunately is a worldwide problem as well. So you're right. Making commercialization a top priority, I think is quite. It's a very conscious decision, and one has to go after it. One has to go after it aggressively and massively to be able to bring about fantastic results.
Yep. But this whole activity of repeated commercializations to keep up with the revenue curves and so on and so forth is a little bit of a treadmill, right? And only day before I saw a quote from Charlie Munger talking about how people should invest, and the quote basically went as follows: that you should invest in a company which any fool can run, because one day a fool will. So the demand on people who are commercializing technologies, or what motivates people who are continuously building new technologies? Because I think the world seems to sometimes think, against them.
Yeah. No, I think it's a challenge. It's definitely the challenge. I think, Apple has done it beautifully, to have this commercialization cycle, which is very which is very mature. And then you have the market, setting the standard. Market expects a new product, so Apple has to deliver it. So I think it's a more of a pull strategy, and pull strategy always works. The way the whole game is set up, where if customer is expecting it, the organization is more apt to report, more apt to comply with it. So I think the more we can make it market driven in the pull strategy, then the push strategy is more effective. But it is definitely a challenge, and it is a treadmill. Of course, it is a treadmill because when you have a good product, there's going to be competition. And when you have a competition, you got to run faster than your competition.
Yep. There's a question from I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Shania, which says, are there strategies that one can use to predict the correct time, especially unpredictable factors such as weather or recession? How can one take these factors into consideration to avoid pitfalls? So this is the million-dollar question of how do you get the timing right? And are there any strategies to do that?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question to answer, but the one way to answer is not be afraid of failure. Can you launch a product and let's say you launch a product and not be afraid of failure? So one way is to actually test the market, and testing the market is sometimes the best strategy. Is launch a product in the market and learn from the market, and then continuously adapt your approach to improvise your approach. Because when you're in the missionary stage, you're really in a forest. You don't know where the exit is. And in order to find the exit, you have to engage with the market. And the earlier you can engage with the market, the faster you're going to get an answer where the exit is.
Mm-hmm. I've heard this other quote as well, that the art of startup or an entrepreneurial business is to stay alive long enough for Mother Luck to meet you. Do you subscribe to that?
Well, I mean, Tesla is a good example. The company started in 2003, and you can see from their curve, they were in a gestation period for like 15 years. So they stayed they stayed in the game long enough that the things came together for them. But also, we can miss the boat. If one of the Elon Musk's, he said, I want to produce an affordable electric car. Now, without that mission statement, you can't make it happen. So he had a mission statement that I want an affordable electric car, which drove it to mature the technology, then eventually deliver 300,000 vehicles per quarter. So I think that's important, is what is the ultimate mission you're going after? And without that mission, even Mother Luck can't help much.
So Vaibhav had a question on Tesla as well, asking if how did Tesla manage the cash flows and the costs of technical advances, especially dependent technologies, and how they were looking at commercialization in, say, 2005 to 2010?
Yeah, so I think it was, it's a typical story. You beg, borrow, and steal. Elon Musk did a lot of begging, a lot of borrowing, and you had quite a few rounds of funding. So it is when you're an entrepreneur and you are constantly going after resources, and you believe in your mission, and you have to constantly look for resources. So the way to manage it was always, Tesla went through quite a few iterations of their technologies, and they had quite a few issues with founders. So all those are a normal process of a startup, but you have to, realize it's always, as an entrepreneur, you got to beg, borrow, and steal so that your team can have a lot of resources to continually move forward.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Rajalakshmi on can healthy and timely collaborations play a role in ensuring the longevity of startups and companies, especially if in such a volatile kind of a situation where you're working on ideas which are continuously changing around you, would that help?
Yeah, I think, having great partners always helps. Also, again, having bad partners can pull you down. When Steve Jobs was trying to launch, iPhone, they had a pact with Motorola that lasted for a year. And then they had pact with AT&T, which worked very well. So I think having partners, again, it's a learning process. Everything you do is a learning process. Yes, having partners, definitely good partners who complement your mission, can help your longevity. But and again, you have to be able to exit the partnership when it's not working. And you have to be able to move on to a new partner as your business is evolving. So it is a constantly changing landscape to which we have to be aware of and develop a business strategy accordingly.
Yeah. Before I ask the next question, I just want to point out that Vidula has put in a link for a feedback form. So please do give your inputs and feedback as well. I wanted to introduce one question of my own here as well. You talked about the missionary phase, and there's always a bet that's involved. And I mean, there's always this element of foresight involved in what the future will be very often. So do you have any tips and pointers on how do you pick problems? How do you decide what to bet on? Do you have any suggestions on that? And a related point is, if we do bet on those, is there a method to de-risking it and to design products to reduce your risks?
Yeah, I think the method of de-risking, Prem, is that you want to talk to a lot of people, and you want to talk to a lot of people who are stakeholders in your industry, and that's an important part, because at the end of the day, you want to develop an intuition, right? It's you can't. It is not a computer process. It is not a scientific process. At the end of the day, entrepreneurs make money because they develop an intuitive feel of the decision they're going to make. And how do you develop an intuitive feel? You can't develop an intuitive feel by sitting on your desk. You have to talk to a lot of people. Now, there is a rule of thumb that you need to talk to 5 people a day. So if you talk to 5 people a day and you are able to build enough contact base and build enough knowledge base, and of course, you develop an intuitive feel for, now again, your bet can be wrong, but that doesn't matter at all. What matters is that failure is a part of the game. You learn from it and you continue to move forward. You say, okay, what else can I do? So I think we shouldn't be afraid of making a bet. We shouldn't be afraid of making a wrong bet as an entrepreneur. We simply, do our homework and make the best bet possible. And if it fails, oh well, you just move forward to the next bet.
Mm-hmm. There is a question about what happens after you have, say, done your technology validation at some scale, right? How do you scale up that technology to make products, manufacture them, and so on? And funding is very often a challenge at that stage. Furthermore, are there any tips and pointers for people who post MVP or post demonstration and validation of their technology are struggling to commercialize it or to scale it up at to levels which customers want to see it at?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Prem. It's funding is always an issue, and what I tell is, it's a numbers game. You have to believe in your passion. You have to stay on the course. A lion has to hunt 10 times to get one meal. So that's a 10% chance even for a lion, right? So for entrepreneurs, you have to knock at 100 doors to maybe get one bite. So to me, what's important is, and that 100 doors are not, they're full of value, because at every door you knock, you are going to learn something from it. So it makes you stronger, it makes you harder. So I think once it's a test of your belief, right? So once you have got your proof of concept and you want to scale up, one is that knock at a lot of doors and refine your business plan, refine your pitch, and continuously, continue to move forward. Failure should be a welcome part. You should not really feel disappointed, because every failure is going to make you stronger. and then go after your vision. Go after your vision with full inspiration, full gusto, without worrying about the failure. So the rule of the game is, after having your proof of concept, just simply knock at a lot of doors and continually knocking until you find the one that opens.
Mm-hmm. Rakesh, you had a comment about spreading development costs in multiple markets. That, of course, is something which everybody would want to do. What is the right time to do it in your commercialization process? Because your investors are typically looking at seeing the first product out there in the market, and you want to spread your platform across to other markets as well. How do you strike a balance between focus and breadth?
Yeah, I mean, this is a delicate balance. I mean, that's a very good question, Prem. It's a very delicate balance, and investors normally don't understand it, don't like it. So you have to be careful. If you can showcase that with minimum amount of investment, you can launch into a new market, it becomes a great incentive. Otherwise, yes, it's a delicate balance. And if you see Google begin to venture into different markets when they have pile of cash, but if you have investors, it's a difficult decision. But if you don't have investors, then it's more of, you can choose to enter at different markets, which a lot of small companies do. A lot of small companies end up in having different markets simply because they can afford to, and no investor or investor group is watching them. But when you have investor group, then it becomes more difficult. It becomes much more of a delicate balance because they like to see focus.
Mm-hmm. You had a couple of comments about the companies imagining R&D as their commercialization department, but not really so, or manufacturing as well. I just wanted to understand from you, in your own companies, what do you mean when you say that this department or activity is focused on commercialization? What is part of it, and how do you also bring in that that you mentioned that your team needs to experience the pain of customers, right? How do you make that happen?
Yeah, so I think what normally ends up happening is, when you go through a traditional commercialization process where you have an R&D, and then you have a handover from R&D to production support, and then to manufacturing, and then to sales and marketing, and into the market. So that is a long process, and also it is disjointed process where each stage is kind of a handover to the new stage. So what normally I prefer to see is that you are doing your market launch, manufacturing launch, and R&D at the same time, and these paths are running in parallel. So you have got market engagement right at the beginning. R&D is directly getting feedback from the market. R&D is getting feedback from manufacturing. And then all these three processes are going at the same time. And I think I like to use the term readiness level, manufacturing readiness level, market readiness level, technology readiness level. So these levels essentially have to go in parallel. And then when the product is launched, it's very important that we are R&D engineers interacting with, first R&D engineers are interacting with the customers, so because they are the farthest removed from the product, and they are the one who actually can change the product. So getting the feedback from the customer through third party or through sales or through manufacturing becomes less effective. So to me, when you have field trials, let's say you launch a electric scooter. So it's important that in a showroom you place your R&D engineers, go talk to customers, see what they want, what they talk about, and then ride with them. So it's very important to have your engineers, especially R&D engineers, be part of customer pain, because that's the fastest way. If they're not part of the pain, then it is disjointed, and we lose ability to have speedy actions.
Yeah, I was on mute. Sorry about that. A couple of nuts and bolts questions. One question from Dinesh here is about basically, you're an inventor as well, and you've also commercialized your own technologies. How do you put all your documentation together? Are there any thumb rules or advice for other inventors and technology developers so that they don't enter into problems later?
Oh, that's a $1 million question. And I think documentation is always Achilles' heel. It's always a painful process. And now I think, of course, there are a lot of online tools available for documentation too. I don't really have a good answer on documentation. I think we struggle with documentation. I know a lot of big companies struggle with documentation. And I think there are a lot of tools available for documentation. And it is one of the most critical parts. We maintain a lot through our ERP system. There are good tools available through Oracle, etc. But things of documentation can become very expensive. But
so, Rakesh, I think his question was also about legal documentation in terms of what kind of legal arrangements you enter into when you're working with many people commercializing it in collaborations and so on and so forth.
Sorry, I didn't understand that question.
I think question is also about getting your legal documents right, the process of commercialization, right? So that
right.
You don't get into litigations or avoid some of those rough edges.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the framework, legal structure in India is sound enough, strong enough to be able to protect the young entrepreneurs. I don't know how well it is, but I think I have a feeling that it is a good legal structure. But yes, those legal documentation, it can be a nightmare. It can be a problematic. So having a good counsel, even having a good counsel can be a problem unless you can develop your own intuitive feel. So again, when you face with a legal challenge or legal, again, I would say take advice, talk to a lot of customers, a lot of people, and develop your own feel for it, and also have a good counsel. Having a good attorney is important, but at the end of the day, attorneys also make mistakes. At the end of the day, you are the responsible person, and you want to be clear of what goals you want in a deal or what goals you want in a legal documentation, and make sure that those goals are clear when the legal document is done. So again, the rule is talk to a lot of people, question your attorney, and make sure you're comfortable with the legal documentation that is presented to you.
Yep. Another question, I think I'll just have a couple more questions. Ravi Pandey has a question. How do you overcome the dilemma of inventors with respect to technology transfer versus spin-off? So when you invent something, how do you take a decision on whether you want to do it as a company or you want to transfer it to somebody else who would build it out?
So let me understand this question. Is it's again, let's say you have developed the technology and then you want somebody else to scale it up for you or manufacture it for you?
Yeah, typically there are people who also license it to other people to make it, right? So they have a choice between technology transfer versus building out a company of their own to take it to market. So I think the question is, how would you choose between them, and how do you resolve this dilemma sometimes of inventors, whether they should go this way or that way?
Well, I think, again, it depends on what goals you have set for your company. I work for a company, their whole goal was being able to file patents. And so they filed a lot of patents every year so they could license it. That was their whole business model, right? What is your business model? I think that has to be very clear, is that if you can make more money by filing patents by less licensing, then I would say go for it. Let's say you are into pharmaceutical, and if that is attractive and lucrative, then you go after licensing. On the other hand, if you are in a market where licensing is not that lucrative, and it's better to be able to manufacture your own invention, then I think you go after that part of it. Again, it's very important to know your strengths and then have clarity on the goals. Without that, I think it becomes difficult to make a decision.
Yep. So I think we are coming to a close. I thought I'll ask you to comment and elaborate a little bit on your definition of commercialization skills, which I thought was very interesting. You mentioned how quickly can we respond or change market demand in our favor, right? What's the context in which you came up with this particular definition? Since one would assume that one is talking about merely taking a technology and finding markets and so on and so forth. But I think you have looked at it slightly differently. Do you want to elaborate on that comment?
Yeah, so I think, my comment relates to, for example, let's say, we go into automotive, choice of automotive, right? So your choice of automotive depends on what stage you are in your life, in your career. For example, when I was getting out of college, I was, any car would do. And when you go further into life, then you want to have maybe a luxurious car, maybe you have, a luxurious brand, etc. So as you get older, you are going to have different needs, etc. So again, that is a reflection of the market is changing, right? So if I develop a product, and if I don't respond to the changing markets, then it becomes difficult to stay competitive, right? So and that refinement can be brutal. For example, Tata Nano did not really succeed in this market. Why it didn't succeed? Because this was a misreading of the market. We as Indians are actually very refined in terms of how we see ourselves or what cars we want to drive, right? So Tata Nano was actually below the status we could digest, right? So I think that's what's important is how do you correctly read the market, or how do you change the market so that you can take advantage of it? And it is a fearful situation most of the time, as Andy Grove used to say, only paranoia survive. To me, having a pulse on the market becomes very critical. And if you miss that pulse, then of course you lose the dominance in the market, or you lose your market share, etc.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rakesh. I think I've covered a lot of questions. I've left a few out, but I think we can take it up some other time separately. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Talking to us and sharing your experiences and learnings. With that, thanks from my side. I'll hand it over to Vidula now to do the closing remarks.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, Dr. Premnath. Thank you, Mr. Rakesh. I think it was very interesting. And for newcomers like us into this field, these are real good pointers on which, we can also build on. And if, as last time I proposed, if you could sometimes visit even Venture Center, it will be really helpful to all our startups as well as the team here. So I would request all the participants to also please put in your feedback, because it is helpful for us to, discuss such more topics like this on new discussions on it. With this, I think if there are no other questions, and if we have nothing else to discuss more, we can stop here. So thank you, Mr. Rakesh. Thank you for coming and accepting our invitation.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.